All right, we're on.
Wait, so what are we doing?
So we're gonna go through this test. This is the progressive test that y'all took. And, all right, so we're gonna go through this. So this is the first question that we had. You had a picture. This is manufacturer, builder. Down here, it's kind of hard to see, but you see some agriculture. This is the city up here. It says, this cover from a 19th century periodical helps illustrate that the United States was beginning to change from, give me a wrong answer.
B.
B, a slave-owning society to one without slavery. Wrong answer, right? Because in the progressives, we don't study slavery, right? Bryson, what's another wrong answer?
A.
What's another wrong answer, Stephanie?
D.
D, a direct democracy. A direct democracy to a representative one, right? Because we're a democracy, we're not exactly direct yet, but this is not discussing anything about democracy. So Bryson said, he mentioned A, we have A and we have C.
Yes, yeah.
50-50 chance, which one's right, Bryson?
It's A.
A, mostly rural society to a modern urban one. So we have farming, which is rural. We have cities, which is urban. Manufacturing, building, I think that's the right answer, A, right? All right, 2. Why did the Populist Party want free coinage of silver? Give me a wrong answer.
C. I mean H. G.
Okay, H, to raise campaign contribution limits? Yeah. Wrong answer. G, to reduce economic inflation? Okay, let's take those out. G and H. We've got F and J. Which one's the right answer?
A. I mean,
Yeah, okay, or F, right?
whatever.
The first one, F, to increase the amount of money in circulation, which means to actually increase inflation. So G would have been, I mean, that would have looked right, except for this word reduce. Because what they want to do is increase inflation, which increases the prices for produce. That's what the farmers are growing. So it would have helped out the farmers, which that's what the Populist Party was all about, helping the farmers. 19th century nativists organizations advocated. What does the word advocated mean?
Like supported?
Supported. So, give me a wrong answer. So these are nativists. Do you remember what a nativist was? What's a nativist, Elijah?
They're against immigration.
Yeah, they're against immigration, right? They're here in America, they're established, they don't want things getting changed up, they don't want differences coming in, they have an idea what America's about, and they want to keep it there. So, what would they support? So Elijah said the main word. They were against
Immigration, so D.
immigration. So we're looking for that, yeah, D. So promoting an ethnically homogeneous society through restrictions on immigration. A lot of big words. But we know that they're against immigration, so restrictions on immigration, that's against immigration. Ethnically homogeneous. What that means is it's all the same. Okay, homogeneous is everybody's the same. Okay, so that's what they want. They don't want differences. They don't want different cultures. They want just one, what they call American culture, one thing. Okay. Mr. Flaggy, I love it. He says, he calls these the box of death. These like boxes where you have all this reading, because it's difficult to go through. But this is a guy called Hiram Johnson. He's the California governor, 1911. He says the opponents of recall however they may phrase their opposition, in reality believe the people cannot be trusted. On the other hand, those of us who espouse these measures do so because of our deep-rooted belief in popular government, and not only in the right of the people to govern, but in their ability to govern. And this leads us logically to the belief that if the people have the right, the ability, and the intelligence to elect, they have as well the right, ability, and intelligence to reject or to recall. And this says, the reform discussed by Governor Johnson in this excerpt says what? So we know recall is being able to call back those people that we've elected for that do a bad job, right? To recall them back. Stephen? J, created new eligibility requirements for candidates for public office. Okay, that would be a good answer in most cases. Okay, but it's not the best one. So when we're talking about a recall, we're talking about elected officials, okay? And being able to reject or recall them. So if you're elected to office, right, and you don't do the right thing by the people that elect you, are you worried?
You should be.
You should be, right? So let's say you're at home and your mother or father gives you a bunch of chores to do, and they take off and they're coming back home. When they come home and you're not done with your chores, are you gonna be held accountable? Yes, right? You're gonna be held accountable.
So it's H.
So it's H. Made elected officials more directly accountable to their constituents. Constituents is that word so it's the people they represent, the people that elected for them. They represent those people, that's the constituents, the people in their district or electorate. All right, 5, the social gospel movement was focused on which of the following ideals? C, social justice. Okay? So we have lots of movements in the progressive era, and this just happens to be about social justice. Once again, you can do the little word association, right? If you don't know anything else, go with something that you do know, a little bit of word association. In his book, How the Other Half Lives, Jacob Reese attempted to, give me a wrong answer.
H.
Celebrate the lifestyles of the business aristocracy. Yes, that's absolutely wrong. Give me the right answer. F. Publicize the living conditions of the urban poor. Okay? That's kind of one of those things. So on a progressive test, one of the things that we look for when we look for answers, we look for the words urban, we look for poor, right? Urban poor. And Reese, in that book, he takes lots of pictures of the city and how bad life was in the city. All right, during the progressive era, one goal of state-level political reformers was to, so this is state level, so on a test, one thing you want to do on a test is use the test as your resource, right? On an earlier question, one of the things that we said was wrong, it talked about direct democracy, and I said, well, yeah, they're trying to work towards that. We're a democracy, but it had nothing to do with that question. I think it was number 1. But we're trying to work towards direct democracy, okay? So you try to use your resource to remember some of those phrases. So political reformers was to work towards what? It has to do with recall, and it has to do with the 17th Amendment, which meant direct election of senators.
C.
C, promote the principle of direct democracy. So we vote directly for those people that are gonna represent us, okay? That's a lot of memorization right there, where you have to know the answer. But you always look for the terms that are showing up continually on the test. All right. 8, well, I gave this to you. How did the 17th Amendment change democracy in America?
Jay?
Yeah, which I just discussed it. I forgot that this is in the test. Yeah, provided for the direct election of US senators. So, direct election, direct democracy, okay? The language in a test usually repeats itself, especially when it's over a unit. All right, the passage of the 19th Amendment resulted in which long-term trend? So you have to remember what the 19th Amendment was about. What was the 19th Amendment?
Right for women to vote?
Yeah, right for women to vote. Very good. So what was the long-term trend that it resulted in? B, women attaining positions of authority at all levels of, that's what they call a really good distractor. No.
What?
Yeah, I was gonna go with that too.
I said D.
Oh, you said D? Oh, I wish I had a air horn. I'd go, bonk. No.
Hold on.
Why is D wrong? Why would D be wrong?
Lower turnout being higher for women, because it wasn't high, it was, no.
Well, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's not necessarily higher, but it might be higher, but it's national versus local election. I don't know, that's kind of a weird, that'd be a weird little data point.
Huh?
So C and D is wrong. So what would, excuse me, B and D is wrong.
So C?
C. Yeah, good distractors. This was a tough question. But the reason C is correct is women voting in large numbers, because they have the right to vote, at the local, state, and federal level. Because in some areas, they could vote locally. In some states, they could vote locally, not a whole lot. But the amendment to the Constitution gave them the right to vote in any election at any level, okay? So it's C. All right. How did the publication of Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, that's the book, contribute to a change in the relationship between government and business? Give me a wrong answer.
H.
H, Congress created a regulatory agency to audit railroads. Very good, because The Jungle wasn't about railroads, right? What was it about? Yeah, the meat. About meat, nasty thing happening in the shops and factories. So, change in relationship between government and business, we took that out. What's another one that's wrong?
J.
J. Okay, it's not about discriminating when hiring. So those two are out. So we have these two, F and G. Which one's right?
G.
G. Yeah, inspection of food products were implemented. Very good. Specifically the Meat Inspection Act, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and why did I say that? Because we have this beautiful cartoon. It says, what was the most likely result of the publication of images such as this 1906 political cartoon? And then it actually says, I think, canned meat here. And they say, oh, it stinks. So,
It's obviously the working conditions.
Wait, did we already answer that one? Cause I know it. I think it's.
what's the
wrong.
answer?
No, laugh at me if I'm wrong. It's C, right?
So I can't laugh? Huh? C
You
is
give me
correct.
the answer before the.
You're right, C is correct. So, the government passed the Pure Food and Drug Act. So if you're in doubt, right, you look, this is canned, I think it says canned beef, actually. So it's gonna be about food, okay? So, this is a distractor. Private companies refuse to import foreign foods. I mean, we never studied anything like that, right? But we do know about the Pure Food and Drug Act, and we know about the Meat Inspection Act. All right, 12, the progressive goal to implement women's suffrage, what does that mean? What does suffrage mean?
Women's right to vote.
Right to vote. Was accomplished by what?
You want the right answer?
Yeah, give me the right answer.
J?
J, a constitutional amendment. Now, some of the students in the other classes got that wrong because they misunderstood. An amendment is an amendment to the Constitution, okay? So when we say 19th Amendment or 17th, we're talking about actual amendment to the Constitution, which is a big deal. You have to have ratification in order to pass it. So, when we say 19th Amendment, that's an amendment to the Constitution, a constitutional amendment. All right, this one was tough because these people were covered briefly. Lincoln Stephens and Jane Addams are best known for, temperance and prohibition looks really good as a distractor. Political movements on behalf of the populace, boy, that looks great. Interest of organized labor, that looks really great. Attempting to ease the populations of the urban poor, great. If you don't know these people, what's the answer? All of the above? Not an option. There's one correct answer. And it has to do with, once again, when we talk about progressives, and we're talking about using the test as a reference, what's a theme or a locality throughout the test, throughout the progressive era? What are we talking about? A lot. A fancy word for city. Yeah, urban areas, right? Because we're taking pictures of the urban areas, we're taking pictures of the factories, right? And who are the people that we're real concerned about in the urban areas? The poor. Okay. So if I didn't know about these people at all, I would go with D, because of the language. Because the progressives deal a lot with the urban poor. They do deal with these other things. We talk about the populist, we talk about organized labor, we talk about temperance and prohibition, but if I looked at this test and I was taking this test, overall I'd go with the urban poor, which is what they did, okay? Just because of the language of the test and the language of the progressives. All right, 14. So Seneca Falls Convention is actually before the progressives, but if we remember correctly, this is where they get together and they write up a constitution about women's suffrage, women's rights. So the goal of this resolution was eventually achieved with the what? H, ratification of the 19th Amendment, right? Women's right to vote. Grants suffrage to women. So if you know the 19th Amendment in the progressive era, that's like 3 questions so far, right? Okay. All right, so 15, we're talking about Booker T. Washington. Here's a notice. And it says, how did the person named in this 1909 handbill work to improve the lives of African Americans? And it's hard to read the illustration. The illustration is supposedly going to give you more information than what it does. But what do we know about Booker T. Washington? Yes, ma'am.
You want the answer?
I want the answer.
C.
Yeah, he promoted vocational training, right? He said, let's work towards equality, work towards acceptance, okay? All right, good.
I remember it from the Kung Fu.
Oh, yeah, that was in the Kahoot. Yeah. I was worried about this one. Okay, this says, and look, what number is this? Number 16. So it says up here, workers, you have to really look at this, workers stringing beans in a Maryland factory in 1909. So these are workers. And the reason I say that is because you need to look at the title of pictures and illustrations. It gives you information. Because if I would have looked at this without that title, I would think they're in school, right? So it says workers. It says, what were photographs such as this one taken by Lewis Hine primarily intended to accomplish? J, focus attention on the need for child labor reforms. I like that one. Because, talk about workers, that's labor. Do we see anything, oh, here's labor again. Document labor conditions during an economic crisis. I mean, it's kind of a crisis, but not economically, right? Because the factory owners are making tons of money. So that's a close one. That's a distractor. But it's about this. The need for child labor reforms. And see, I would have gone with this one, schools, if I hadn't the title. I didn't see the title. Oh, 17, achievements of Ida B. Wells. She does a lot of things. Give me a wrong answer.
B. A.
An artist of the Harlem Renaissance. So yeah, if you look through here, I don't see anything about that. Give me another wrong answer.
A.
A religious leader. Yeah, she might have been religious, but I don't see anything in here about it. Now, one thing about an artist of the Renaissance, Harlem Renaissance, she does publish something up here. She publishes something here. But I agree, those are both, I take them out. So is she a supporter of prohibition?
No.
I'd say no, because there's nothing, even in the book she writes, Southern Whores, A Red Record, doesn't really seem like it's about alcohol. Prohibition's about alcohol. What's the answer?
D.
Yeah, D. Advancement of equality, and the big clue is this right here. The NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Okay? Equality for women and for African Americans. D. All right, 18. A student about or learning about U.S. history is instructed to write a paper about W.E.B. Du Bois and race relations in the United States. Which of the following facts would be most relevant to the student's assignment? Give me the right answer.
G.
G, the NAACP was organized to help secure full legal equality for minority citizens. How do we remember that?
The NAACP looks like it should have the, what's it called? Things. Cause they're all capitalized. So that's how I remember it, cause they're like all capitalized.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I didn't even think about that, but yeah. So I remember the last time when we studied, you were like, oh, these are all initials, all capitalized, and these are all initials, right? All capitalized. So, yeah, that's one way to remember it, but he is
Colored.
the founder of the NAACP, or a founder. And then some of the distractors, we didn't study Selma to Montgomery, that's actually much later. Civil Rights Act, that gives us the year 1968, so we know that's not the Progressive Era. And then the March on Washington, that's a different era too, so, very good. All right, here's President Theodore Roosevelt and John Muir on Glacier Point, Yosemite Valley, 1903. So, it says, what was the most likely topic of discussion between these men? Tell me what it was. C, designating additional land as national parks. So, I mean, Roosevelt did deal a lot with the railroad companies. We didn't study much about maritime shipping routes, not yet. Reducing the influence of environmental lobbyists. I don't think there's a lot of lobbyists at the time. But we know that what does he do? He starts national parks and he forms the what? National Park Service?
Oh.
National Park Service. Of course, John Muir was a huge conservationist. Starts the Audubon Society, I believe. All right, a major impact of the populist movement in the 1890s was that, so the populist movement, remember that's at the very beginning. We already saw a question before that talked about silver, right? And inflation. So major impact of the populist movement in the 1890s was what? This is one that a lot of people missed.
I probably missed it. Populist, what is that?
I think I said G, but I don't remember.
G, so that says farmers should partner with large corporations to keep their farms from bankruptcy.
I chose H.
That sounds good.
I think I put G.
You just put H, farmers were looking to be free of regulations. We didn't have much regulations back then. Which one?
I put G.
G, so partnering with large corporations. Those are actually things that are more common today, issues that come up today.
Mm.
So let's look at F and J. So the populist movement begins, that's kind of the first part of the Progressive Era. And people start up all kinds of movements, they start addressing problems. So do you think with F, that the public would have rejected the reforms for American farmers? No, because everybody starts to accept reforms, right? Everybody wants reforms. So what's the answer?
J.
Yeah. The populist movement, if you remember right, they had two main things. Silver, and to try to make everybody aware about the problems that farmers had. And even silver was just a way to correct that. So they said silver because they want inflation to rise, so that the price of the crops also go up and the farmers can make more money. So they're all about trying to get the problems of farming and farmers advanced in the consciousness of America and get them addressed as far as fixing them, helping the farmers out. All right, 21. There's hereby created an agency which purposes to conserve the scenery and the natural and historic objects and the wildlife therein, and to provide for the enjoyment of the same in such manner and by such means as will leave them unimpaired for the enjoyment of future generations. So this is the mission statement for the blank 1916. So which agency name belongs on the blank line? Give me a wrong answer.
A wrong answer?
Yeah.
D.
D.
Yeah, U.S. Border Patrol. I don't know when the U.S. Border Patrol started. Give me another wrong answer.
C.
C, Bureau of Reclamation. What's the right answer?
B.
National Park Service. 1916. And that kind of goes with that picture of John Muir and Teddy Roosevelt. All right, 22.
Oh, no.
Oh, this is de Tocqueville.
Oh,
All right, so he says that social conditions become more equal. The number of persons increases who, although they are neither rich nor powerful enough to exercise any great influence over their fellow creatures, have nonetheless acquired or retained sufficient education and fortune to satisfy their own wants. They owe nothing to any man. They expect nothing from any man. They acquire the habit of always considering themselves as standing alone, and they are apt to imagine that their whole destiny is in their hands. And the question is, which American value is described in this excerpt?
There.
Individualism, right? That's good. Because he's talking about being an individual. This is tough. De Tocqueville's kind of tough because he's writing in 1835. The language is a little bit different. But this is individualism. Now remember, there's 5 values in Tocqueville, right? Okay, 5 values. I'm going to show you something here in a second. So that's individualism. So we've got that one nailed. Because there's more. Oops. Here's another one. Oh, commerce makes men independent of each other. So commerce, which is another word for what?
Commerce, group.
No, commerce is kind of an old, kind of a 19th century way of saying business. Okay? So business or trading makes men independent of each other, so independent is important. Gives quite another idea of their personal value, persuades them to manage their own affairs. That kind of sounds like, independence again. And teach them to be successful. No country in the world has a more lively or concerned feeling for property than the United States. And nowhere else does the majority display less inclination. So that means less desire towards those doctrines which threaten to impair in any way at all the manner in which property is owned. So it sounds kind of like the country is basically going to stay out of people's business. Okay? Do y'all read that the same way? They're going to stay out of their business, the country. Which value important to America's success as a constitutional republic is best illustrated in this excerpt. You have social justice, populism, laissez-faire, and egalitarianism. So we know de Tocqueville's got 5 values. Which one do you think it is?
C?
C, laissez-faire. Very good, Stephen.
Because it's like hands off, right?
Hands off. Yeah, hands off. Exactly. And that's kind of what he's saying, right? Gonna say hands off the business. Okay? All right. Remember that one. According to the 19th century French observer Alexis de Tocqueville, America's belief in liberty, egalitarianism, individualism, populism, and laissez-faire are crucial in its success as a what? What is America? What is the United States? What do, we're actually almost, you can look at it and go, well, we're all of it.
I wanna say F,
I'm-
but I don't remember who this one.
I think it's F.
Yeah.
But we could actually say almost all of them, but you gotta remember, we're not quite a world leader yet, right? We're not a world leader, because you gotta start thinking about the time period. So I'd be less likely to select world leader, Free market, yeah, we're kind of free market because we're hands-off, laissez-faire, but are we an empire?
Not yet.
No. And pure democracy. Are we a pure democracy? No, pure democracy is more like direct democracy, right? And we're trying to work towards that. So constitutional republic looks pretty good, because what do we have? What's our main document for our laws? Constitution. Okay, so let's go with constitutional republic. Now, we had two other questions about the Tocqueville prior to this. What I would do is, I'd go back and I'd make sure, because it's telling you right here, here's the 5 values. If you didn't remember it, and you answered those questions before, you'd want to go back and say, okay, egalitarianism, individualism, populism, laissez-faire. Okay, did I, liberty, did I select the right one? Did I pick an answer that is not part of de Tocqueville? Okay, because this gives you the menu, okay? So you go back to the other ones, but we know we got those right. All right, during the Progressive Era, what tactics are used by the women's suffrage movement? So we know that's getting the right to vote. So the movement to achieve the right to vote, what's their tactics? Give me a wrong answer.
B.
B, teaching self-defense, arming members, and buying from women-owned businesses. Yeah, I mean, women probably, they own businesses certainly, but, I mean, you don't see any pictures of them carrying guns. Teaching self-defense, I think that's something that we do now. We teach a lot of self-defense, but it's not part of that movement. What's another wrong answer? C. Striking, collective bargaining, and unionizing is all part of business, okay? Part of those companies and factories.
The answer is D.
Answer's D. Lobbying, petitions, and nonviolent protest. Why would we say it's not A?
What is what?
Why is it not A?
That's a different, a different situation.
Different movement?
Oh, yeah. Not segregation, that's not what that,
Yeah, it's a civil rights movement,
civil rights.
but how do we know it's not about progressives?
But.
Yeah,
Okay.
right?
It's gonna be a hard attack.
I mean, when I'm thinking of the progressives, I'm not thinking about buses, right? That's much later. This is modern. Bus boycotts, lunch counter sit-ins, political litigation. That's the modern civil rights movement. And this gives it away, especially bus boycotts, which you all know about bus boycotts, right? Because we've studied that already. So that excludes that. That's an easy one to take away. All right, so here's another box. The United States was founded in large part on the desire of its people to participate in the decisions of their government. So this is Access June 10th, 2014, U.S. Department of State, digital access. So it says, which action is an example of the type of participation described above? So this participation, which is desire of its people to participate in the decisions of its government. So what action would go with this description?
J?
How do people decide in the decisions of government? J?
J.
Yeah, voting for city council members, okay? And that's what we talk about when we talk about progressives. It's that ability to vote, okay? That's how we participate in government, in those decisions. And with that vote, we've got the recall, with the And then we've got more and more direct democracy with like the 17th Amendment. All right, 27, let me roll it up, almost there. Which of the following best characterizes the Gilded Age? Ah. Did we discover gold fields in the West? Because gilded means like golden, right? So which of the following best characterizes the Gilded Age?
In my head, I said B, but,
In your head, you said B?
yeah.
B says industrialists use their connections with corrupt government officials
Oh,
for material gain and political power.
wow.
I think I did D. I have no idea.
So D, small family-owned farms were bought and consolidated to form large agricultural corporations. So the Gilded Age, what's something that we kind of can associate with the Gilded Age? Did it come before or after the Progressive Era?
Before.
Before. So were things really good or were they bad? Yeah, kind of bad. I mean, we businesses were like growing like crazy, people making money. Our nation was growing because of that, but we had a lot of corruption, right? We had problems, people were getting poor, the cities were getting too big, polluted. So I would agree with you on B. Industrialists use their connections with corrupt government officials for material gain and political power. Because the other ones don't match up. If you look at this, the Deep South, sharp increase in immigration, okay? Actually, there's people leaving the Deep South. Small family-owned farms were bought and consolidated. There's some of that, but I think that's a little bit later. And discovery of gold fields in the West, not really, that was in the 1849. So, B. Oh, we did our analysis on this. So which group of people most likely inspired the creation of this 1893 cartoon? So this says, they would close to the newcomer the bridge that carried them and their fathers over. What's this group right here? Who are they? Nativists, yeah, J. Which is a question we already have. So once again, use your test as a reference because it'll repeat the language, okay? Especially when we're talking about a TCA test, an ERA test, a unit test. All right, that's it. Any questions? Comments? Who got the highest grade?
You didn't tell us.
Mr. Fox. You got the highest grade.
No.
Yeah, he got the highest grade.
We're the smartest class.
He's not even in this class.